Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 317, cover dated October 1994. So this is Generation Next Part 3, part of the Phalanx Covenant X-Men event, the crossover of the summer of 94. The cover here features a uniform design across the crossover issues from the various X titles. This one focuses on Skin, who will be a member of Generation X, and we also have a tight focus on Banshee as well, flying into action. But this is a cardstock wraparound cover, so I'm going to open that up for you so that you get the full double image there. So we've got White Queen over here on the back cover, and members of Generation X in their Generation X uniforms, so nothing we see actually inside the issue. So we've got Paige Guthrie there, we've got M, we've got Skin, cool stuff. And the art, of course, by Joe Madureira, inked by Dan Green, who also inks Madureira inside this issue. No Terry Austin this issue. And one last little thing to look at there is the gimmick. It's the hollow file strip there. So I hope you can see that. Now let's open this one up to the first page. And we have Paige Guthrie, who was abducted by the Phalanx in issue 36 of X-Men. And she comes to consciousness in a strange place. And she thinks it's weird that the Phalanx would be rude enough to kidnap me under the threat of death, she thinks, but polite enough to cover me with a blanket. So what's going on here? Well, we get this double page spread, and it turns out to be Angelo, Skin, that is. So here's the situation that Paige awakens into. She is a captive of the Phalanx. She is in a cell with other mutants like herself, or so it would appear. And she is wearing, as they all are, these techno-organic suits that are obviously monitoring them and their biosigns and feeding information back to the Phalanx. And we've learned in the course of the crossover the Phalanx is unable to assimilate mutants specifically into their techno-organic gestalt. So who do we have here? We've got Paige Guthrie, of course. We've got Skin. We've got this big guy back here whose name is Gregor. We've got Clarice. This is Blink. And we have Monet St Croix here. And even though she's mute, she is pulling off strips from her techno-organic suit. And that'll factor into a story beat a little later in the issue. The title of this particular part of the crossover is Enter Freely and of Your Own Will. And the creative team, Scott Lobdell, writer, Joe Madureira, penciler, Dan Green, inker, Steve Buccellato, colorist, and Chris Eliopoulos, letterer. Great double page spread here. Great art from Madureira and Green. And something I note in terms of Madureira's stylistic development is, unless I'm mistaken from this issue, he increases the size of characters' eyes, particularly female characters like Paige there. And we'll see it more as the issue progresses. And again, that's a little bit of that manga influence coming into his style. You see it very much in this particular panel of Paige checking out the walls of the cell that they find themselves in. So she is looking around for a way to escape, and she's fairly confident that the X-Men will help them escape. And Skin here takes a pretty jaundiced view of that. Good thing the country mouse showed up to save the day. What did you think? We've been sitting here on our thumbs waiting for you to rescue us. It ain't gonna happen. We've tried everything to get out of here. So Gregor here tries to calm the situation. There, boys and girls, let's not argue among ourselves. I betcha if we all pitch in and work together, we'll all be home for dinner. And this kind of cheerful demeanor and also style of speech of Gregor comes in to be relevant a little later on in the issue. So pay attention to that. Clarice is really traumatized here. Again, look at those big eyes. Definitely there's been a little stylistic change by Madureira, even from the last issue to this one. So Paige discovers something horrifying, which is that she's been infected by the transmode virus. It's there growing on her torso and it's spreading, and of course that could prove fatal. Clarice notices it rather, first of all. But here in the background, if we pay attention to what's going on with the different characters, we see that M is examining the piece of the suit that she's torn off her forearm. So bear that in mind for later. Not very far away, in the city of San Francisco, in the state of California, the handful of friends that can be of most use to Paige are on their way here to the West Coast offices of Frost Enterprises. So we get an establishing shot of San Francisco looking out towards the bay and the Golden Gate Bridge, and also this rooftop of Frost Enterprises, which has a Victorian townhouse here built high atop the gleaming skyscraper. And it's got state-of-the-art defense systems, but it's key to recognize the mistress of the manor, so it doesn't attack these arrivals in silhouette, because Emma Frost is one among them. And who are the rest? Great one-page image here of Everett Thomas with Jubilee on his back, and Banshee carrying Emma down to the ground. They're alighting here on the rooftop. And of course, what's Everett Thomas's powers? It is to sync in with the powers of super beings in his vicinity, and he's obviously syncing with Banshee's ability to fly there. So Emma enters the townhouse, and Banshee grabs her by the arm, and he says, didn't be doing anything so characteristic as trying to waylay the lot of us as bargaining chips against the phalanx. I was burned enough when Sabretooth bolted for parts unknown. That was in issue 36 of X-Men. That will nae happen again, he says to Emma. But she tells him, why you arrogant, self-righteous, doubting, arrogant? You already said arrogant. He shoots back, shut up. After all I've done for you, Cassidy, how you dare question me? So this is kind of this arguing, bickering, testy relationship between these two that will play into their time as co-headmasters of the Generation X school. So it's getting established here. But Banshee here has a reason for being suspicious of her, and that is these dozen targeting devices that were trained on them outside the house, and he uses his sonic power to obliterate those. So Emma is chagrined, and she says, all that time in a coma must have forgotten some of the defenses. Perfectly understandable, says Banshee as they enter the house to get out of the rain. And then we've got this anchor image here of the opulence of Emma's townhouse on top of the skyscraper. She tells them make themselves at home, and she asks Sean what his opinion is of the place. He says it's a bit much for my taste. As a perfect gentleman, you should know it's rude to insult someone in their own home, she says to him. And he gets back to business. Now tell us what you hope to accomplish by bringing us here. That is, if you're through trying to impress us. She says here in a kind of flirty way, I have a whole list of things I can do to impress you, Mr. Cassidy, but there are children present. And again, that's another feature of their upcoming dynamic as co-headmasters of the new school. But anyway, she gets to business, and she has information on a S.H.I.E.L.D. safe house in the area. And so they decide to head there to see if they can get any particular intel on the location of the missing, abducted children. So then, speaking of whom, we go back to them, and the narrative caption informs us that they're closer than anyone suspects. So they must be in the area nearby somewhere. So Clarice here still freaking out about the progress of the techno-organic transmode virus on Paige, and then this guy Gregor says, "Jeepers, it looks like the Phalanx managed to do to you what it couldn't do to the rest of us." And again, that way that he speaks is going to play into a little revelation upcoming in the story. It's a great upshot here, 3/4 profile upshot of Paige. That's difficult to do and nicely done by Madureira. And Skin here, pessimistic about the ability to escape. He says, just because I'm oppressively negative, sorry, it's the opposite in fact. He says, just because I'm oppressively negative doesn't mean I'm not smart enough to hope. So why the sudden change of attitude? Well, they're interrupted by the arrival of this guy, this huge guy here with these, it looks like trophies on his chest here, strung up on his chest. And he introduces himself by dispelling any prospect that they have to hope. I was a human being once, my name was. Doesn't matter, I was a man, a husband, a father. My heart was filled to overflow with hope that the world would be a better place if I were only brave enough to join the Phalanx and rid that world of mutants. But that was when I was a carbonite, something less than I am now. Now I'm called Harvest. And this guy, I think he's the guy that we saw getting on the bus in issue 308 to join the Phalanx. I think it's him. That's my guess anyway. So he says, and I will not rest until all organic life on the planet Earth has been culled as chaff from the wheat. So this really irks Blink. And again, look at those big eyes, particularly this one. And we're to sit back while you attack and kill. No, Harvest, not me. So we get a little explanation of what Blink's power might be. As with most mutants, Clarice Ferguson remembers the first time she used her mutant ability. Unlike many, she recalls waking up several hours later in a pool of blood. In that moment, she vowed never to use her power against another living being. But she does here, in the blink of an eye. For a fraction of an instant, everything that is Harvest is somewhere else. So we see this slicing through his techno-organic body. And then Gregor pulls her back, making out he's concerned that she would be hurt by Harvest. But in that moment that she's held back, the techno-organic portal spirals shut in automatic response to the assault on one of its own. The last sight the young mutants see before they are once again enveloped in this chamber is that of Harvest, reeling in pain, yet recovering. They understand he'll be back. So then we have all the characters in silhouette here, and a good use of the computer colouring in the background for the, let's call them windows or portals, into the cell in which they're held. So Paige tells Gregor not to blame himself for having inadvertently saved Harvest. And Skin here says, we learned they apparently can't dampen our powers, or they would have. Which means instead of us being trapped in here with them, they're trapped in here with us. So that's an interesting reversal, the way that he sees it. Then we have this 2-page ad for the upcoming new title next month, Generation X. And we have inside also a timeline here concerning Cable's story. So I'll just show you that there. Hope you can see all of that more or less, leading up to Generation X. And then we have the house ad here for the whole Phalanx Covenant summer event crossover. And then we've got a little quiet scene with Jubilee and Everett out on the Golden Gate Bridge. And Everett trying to connect with Jubilee because she's gone quiet. And he asks her here, would you rather be alone? And she says, believe it or not, when I first started hanging with the X-Posse, all this used to be fun. And now, he asks her, now I hate it, she says. Not all of it, I mean, I love all of them, even Drake, Iceman. They have a bit of a fractious relationship. But I hate this feeling of being useless. I can't stand knowing I can't help my friends when they need me most. And Everett says, I've seen you in action. You can be pretty, and he pauses, impressive. Like he's trying to cheer her up. But she says, please. And a half, Everett. I'm a walking firecracker, for crying out loud. Worser still, I'm a sparkler. Compared to people like Storm and Bishop and Gambit, I'm in serious need of training. So he replies, when put in that context, I'm forced to agree with you. That is a pretty lame power. I think he's being ironic though, but she's miffed. That's really good body language here in this panel by Madureira. And also I like his illustration of the rain as well, hitting off their heads and shoulders as well. It looks very good. So he changes the subject. Where did you say the Banshee and White Queen have gone? And they're a mile away on the shore. So sneaking into the safe house, that's the shield safe house, to try and get a lock on the Phalanx place. So here we are, we have an inside view of the shield safe house. There is a report from their surveillance that we're outside in the rain. Anything to report? All is quiet. And what's happening here is that Banshee is using his sonic power to confuse the physical readings, while Emma's using her sonic power to block their perceptions of them. But the fact that it's a rainy night is going to prove fateful in terms of how this infiltration of the shield safe house works for Emma and Sean. And then we're back wherever it is, the cell is, that the young mutants are being held, and they realize that Monet is no longer mute. And she says, our first priority, people, is to free ourselves from this, the first of many prisons. And she's made something from the techno-organic suit that she stripped off her forearm. And Gregor here says, well, you were in your catatonic stupor, no offense, man. We realized we were pretty trapped. We were trapped pretty darn good. Somehow the Phalanx is monitoring our every move. And Monet responds, they were using these techno-organic suits in part to do so. So what's the other part? Well, we'll find out. Raw material, I've been able to recalibrate in order to facilitate our escape. All I require is a power source. That should be provided by this light. So what's going to happen next? Well, turns out Gregor was a plant all the time. He's part of the Phalanx techno-organic entity, and he's stunned as to how she knew that he was a plant. And everybody else is shocked and surprised as well. Skin asks the obvious question, how did you know, Monet? And she says, there are precious few things I don't know, sir. Okay, so we're getting into Monet's haughty, arrogant, prideful character, just the way that she was characterized throughout the Generation X run. And then we're back in the shield safe house. Banshee and Emma shielded from shield, so to speak. So Banshee says these ultra-sensitive computers are picking up a low-level techno-organic anomaly, too low to trigger any alarms, but and Banshee says, sorry, that was Emma, and Banshee says, but maybe just enough to be pointing me in the right direction of the children. Us, Sean, pardon, pointing us in the right direction of the children. So Emma's invested in the rescue of the young mutants as well. And however, there's a glitch, or there's a twist, where this gun barrel is brought to the side of her head, and it looks like the shield agents have become aware of Sean and Emma's infiltration. So how do they do it for future reference? Well, the explanation is this, if I can turn the page, that the puddles from the water that was pouring down the side of their costumes gave them away. The puddles at your feet were apparently not in Emma's sphere of influence, so that's what gave them away. So Emma here threatens to attack them sonically, but Banshee intervenes and reckons it's better than the alternative of being attacked by Emma. So then they get back to the computer and trying to locate the techno-organic anomaly that they're hoping will lead them to the young mutants. So here's Gregor, what's left of him after Monet's attack on him, and she explains The phalanx, it would seem, have been undone by their own shrewdness. The harvester, in his attempt to monitor us, placed Gregor here as a plant, a ruse betrayed in part by Gregor's over-dependence on obviously antiquated colloquialisms. And that's a funny point because, you know, a challenge for any writer is writing authentic teenage idioms and language. And the older the writer is, the more difficult it is to get those idioms correct. And I think this is Lobdell's little joke here, that he's fairly hopeful that he's going to get the way that teenagers talk right. And Gregor here is the vehicle of that joke. And you only have to look back at early 60s issues of Marvel and Stan Lee's attempt to write a teenager like Rick Jones, and the idioms he gave him being like 10, 15, 20 years out of date. So she continues with her explanation, asks any questions. Skin's got one, but Paige interrupts. So you're saying you think you can get us out of here? Monet responds, at the very least we should be able to escape this particular techno-organic chamber. After that, it will depend entirely on how creative we are when it comes to our survival. So she wants to concentrate there, and she punches her way out of the cell. And that's a pretty dynamic drawing by Madureira. And so they leave through the opening that she's punched for them. And where are they going? There's a little railing there in the distance, but where are they? We have to wait for the last page to find out. And Paige doesn't leave. She's in pain. The techno-organic virus is spreading, and Paige feels like her guts are on fire. She wants to stay behind, but Monet's not having any of it. She says here, when Paige suggests leaving her behind because she'd only slow them up, imminently logical. Now, that's interesting because it should be eminently logical. And is that Lobdell's mistake, or is it part of the characterization of Monet? There's something else I missed there that I want to go back to, which is Skin asks Monet here, I'm impressed, Chica, but is there a reason you didn't do that earlier, like punch them out? Two spring to mind, Mr. Espinoza. But then she's interrupted by Paige. So what are the two reasons? Well, for those of you who read Generation X to the end, you'll know that Monet is not Monet. Actually, she is her twin sisters, or rather her twin sisters are posing as her. So the real Monet is somewhere else. But that's very complicated continuity. But it seems like Lobdell was setting it up here from almost the very beginning, which is interesting, because we don't get any further development on what those two reasons are. One of the twins is autistic and the other isn't. And clearly it's the second one who's dominant now. But the little grammar mistake here, or rather diction mistake, might be an indication of the fact that that twin, the one who's dominant now, doesn't have the same level of education as Monet herself when we do finally get to meet her. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it. But anyway, the little group discover that they are on a battleship at sea, but presumably close enough to the California coast to connect up with that narrative caption from earlier. So next issue, the end of the Phalanx Covenant, or the end of the X-Men. See X-Men 37 for the answer. A couple of letters here that are prefaced by a note from Bob Harris and his assistant editor, Ben Rabb. And these are pretty heartfelt letters on a couple of different topics, and so they decided to run them in full, but without any particular answers given to them. And there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on part 3 of Generation Next, Uncanny X-Men 317. If you did enjoy, please like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.